So yeah, that's basically how the course is going to work. Lecture, workshop, questions throughout. And while you guys are on the workshop, there's going to be opportunities for you guys to click a button, and then fellows can come over and help you guys like individualized one-on-one help on the problems, or you guys can raise your hand and ask me. It's really up to you guys. So there's a lot of support for you guys. Yeah. You guys are supposed to watch it alone. Like there's like pre-readings and I believe a pre-recorded lecture. And so you guys are encouraged to prep and do the pre-readings and come to class somewhat familiarized with what we're going to go over, but we're not going to do that in class. In class, we're going straight lecture and then workshops.
Mm-hmm. Are we supposed to have another module other than the pre-work?
Like basically how that's going to work is when you guys come to class, then I'll unlock the workshops. So right now they're locked. Right now you guys will only be able to see like pre-readings or like pre-work. Okay. So once you come into class that day, I'll unlock the problems. And so, let me see. Yeah. So I'll basically unlock the workshop the day of, and then after we go through the lecture, I'll unlock the solutions, and then the day after, after the class that day. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They have, I believe there's going to be resources that is going to be on LearnDot. So like it'll link you to some articles or some type of pre-reading material. Yeah, learn.fullstackacademy.com.
And should we separately download VS Code, or can we just do everything browser based within?
You can do everything browser based, or through REPL. But the problems are gonna be on in an application that you just open it through a link, okay, and you solve the problems on that space. VS Code, you'll need it for the actual program, but for bootcamp prep, you won't need it. Yeah.
Could you unlock all the pre-readings just in case some of us have time?
Yeah. I don't see why not. Yeah, I'll do that. Like after this lecture, I'll unlock it for you guys. Shouldn't be a problem.
I know we don't need it now for bootcamp prep, but for VS Code, can you help us set up VS Code?
Yeah, of course. Like if you guys have any individual questions like that, that's like not completely necessary in the class, but you guys kind of one-off things that you guys want to work on, then feel free to ask, and then I can definitely help you guys set that up. Yeah. You can use VS Code to test some of your approaches, but it's just not necessary. It's not required. And if you guys are confused about VS Code and that kind of thing, they're just text editors. So basically, when you're writing programs, you would use a text editor, because essentially web applications are just files, and so it's just it's not that different than like Notepad or anything, but it has a lot of like autocomplete and like highlighting, and it has a lot of plugins to make the development process easier. But it's just like a Notepad kind of thing, because essentially all the web applications you see here are just files of HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. They're just files. Yeah, you can use whatever you like, but VS Code it's nice to use VS Code because a lot of your classmates are going to be using VS Code, and you guys will be able to help each other out on little, you guys will all be kind of like together on that. It's like same thing as like you can use a Windows, but Macs are recommended because a lot of the commands might not work on Windows, and you might have to find like a Windows version, things like that. That's not for this, but I'm saying for the actual immersive class. You don't need it, but just like recommended. Like if you have a Windows, you can definitely do it on a Windows, but you might have to like some things might not work. Like some of the workshops that tell you certain instructions, you might have to find like a Windows version for it because they're sort of tailored towards like Mac OS. Yeah.
So for, I guess if you're doing immersive, if you're doing the flex for this class as well, should we be using Visual Studio Code or should we be using CodePen?
You guys don't need. I mentioned this earlier, but you guys don't need to use Visual Studio. But if you guys want practice coding in it, then by all means you can use it in practice in getting yourself used to the environment.
So I noticed the solutions were posted in Visual Code.
Yeah.
Solution videos. So I'm just wondering if within the immersive programs, the flex program, will that be primarily what everyone's using?
Yeah.
Okay,
They're
so
mostly going to be using.
familiar with that.
Yeah, it's not going to hurt to get familiar with it. But in your actual workshops, like you're gonna if you write it in Visual Studio, you're gonna have to like copy paste it over to the actual browser because there's test specs that you guys have to pass, and so you're gonna need to paste it anyway. So a lot of people just end up coding in that sandbox, as opposed to like writing in Visual Studio Code just to do that. Because, I mean, what the purpose of what you guys are gonna use it for is just gonna be like a glorified notepad, anyways, for this course, because we're not gonna be creating like entire web applications in this course. We're just going to learn the foundations of JavaScript and solving problems.
Yeah, I just wanted to recommend, having been through this once before, when we start doing the workshops and everything, and you have the problems to go through, if you type in there automatically, it goes to CodePen. And CodePen is good enough for what you got to do here.
Yeah.
I mean, the Visual Studio and all is nice if you're building something more, but for solving our problems and all, CodePen is fine.
Yeah.
You can sign into it and then you can save your page so that at the end of this you'll have all the problems done and saved. So just a suggestion, no panic,
Yeah, exactly. If you guys are like starting out, you don't need to like bog yourself down with all these like side things. Like it's more important to focus in on the actual language and not really all the other sort of environment factors.
Okay.
Yeah, straight down to the left, like right across where the water is. So yeah, that's sort of how the course is going to run on a day-to-day basis. I sort of mentioned this before, but the workshops are going to be difficult, and they're meant to feel like you can't get through all of them, but that's just simply the nature of the course, and it's also the nature of the actual course. It's like, it's 3 months and you're trying to learn web dev from scratch. It's sometimes going to feel impossible, but they're meant for you to do your best and to feel challenged. But you guys will always have time to go back and look at all the problems on your own time and things like that. But don't feel discouraged if it's really challenging and you kind of don't know where to start, or you didn't get through all the problems, because that's not the purpose. It's more just to get used to solving these types of problems. And again, you guys will have help at every single step of the way, instructors and fellows. I know this is kind of small, but there's a little help button that you can click on LearnDot, and you'll get some individualized attention if you click that button. So yeah, you guys are recommended to add your pictures, because that's how people are going to find you guys. Like if you put a help ticket in and you don't have a picture on your profile on LearnDot, it might be hard, and you're going to, the fellow is going to have some trouble. So if you guys want to upload your picture, you don't have to do it now. You can do it now.
Yeah, I didn't download LearnDot. Did you get an email for them?
Yeah, you should have gotten an email after this lecture. Like I can help you guys one-on-one with like little things like LearnDot, Slack, and yeah. So you should, if it's probably in your email, but if it's not, then I can add you to our class on LearnDot.
You may have mentioned this before, but are these slides going to be available?
Yeah, they'll be available.
Yeah.
you build them?
Slides.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I know.
So about pair programming, again, if you guys came kind of late, we're going to be pairing for each of the workshops, and it's really helpful to do this and to learn how to work together and work collaboratively. I mean, in my current job, this isn't at every company, but at my current job and in a lot of small companies, there's a lot of tasks where you'll work together with someone on that ticket. And so we do pair programming. It's not mandatory, but it's nice. It's just a nice way to also get to know your, coworkers, and yeah, you get a lot of insights that you might not have thought of yourself by someone else looking at that and approaching that in a certain way. So again, I pretty much went over all these points about pair programming, but it's definitely a good thing, and we do it here, and you guys are going to enjoy it. So I've introduced myself already, but we're just going to go around, and all of us can stand up and state your name and where you're from. I assume that everyone's here to learn how to code to either become a software engineer. So if you guys are here for a different reason, then feel free to give that reason, but I don't think we need to do that unless you guys are truly here for some crazy, weird reason. Then I do want to hear it. And an interesting fact about yourself, if you want to. I mean, if you can't think of one, then you don't have to say it. But yeah, so I'll go ahead and start, and then we can pick each other as we go around, and then you guys can stand up. So my name is David, and my name is David Ko. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California. I'm here to teach you guys and be a resource to help you guys through the process of learning JavaScript. And an interesting fact about myself, I guess I played trombone in high school, but I was really, really bad. And I just stopped after 2 years. I don't really know why I started it, but I did. But it's a cool instrument if you're good at it. But I was really not very good. Yeah, I should have chose saxophone. That's what I always tell myself. But yeah, we can start this way.
Hi, my name is Latifa Johnson. I like to be called Tifa for short. I'm from Brooklyn. Interesting, no assholes, just seen it. That's cool. Anyways, interesting fact about myself, I like horror movies. So, that's it.
Nice. You can pick who goes next.
You're close.
My name is Pedro. I'm from Jersey. I'm here to learn the basics of coding or trying to learn a little bit more.
Nice.
I'm a Red Sox fan, so who are you guys? That's pretty much it. Thank you. One down the line.
Hi everyone, my name is Chichi. I was born in Nigeria, raised in New York. I'm here to code, and an interesting fact about myself, I went to Israel and almost drowned in the Dead Sea.
Impressive.
Dang.
Oh,
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Cassie. I'm from Jersey as well. An interesting fact about me is I first started coding when I was 8 years old to make websites for my Neopets. It fell off.
Nice.
Oh, hey everybody, I'm Mark, Jersey represent, originally from Jersey, live in Brooklyn now. Interesting fact about myself, I run a dad's-focused menswear brand, it's a side hustle, and I trade Bitcoin.
Joel, I'm in project management, looking to learn about code, get into tech world, and hopefully take the flex program after this.
Nice.
Interesting fact about myself, I had an app idea, almost got a company on board to do it, but looked at my background and they're like, we don't really know if you know enough about web development, so part of the reason I'm here.
Nice. Yeah, we can just go down the line. Yeah, you don't have to pick.
Hey, Justin Matthew. I'm born in India, raised here, and live in Long Island. It's a nice commute. Why I'm here to learn code, obviously.
Yep.
And interesting fact about myself, I guess I was in 6 states over the last month.
Whoa.
I don't want to travel anymore.
Hi, my name is Ellie. I'm from Brooklyn. I'm here to learn more about coding. And it's an interesting fact is being an Orthodox Jew, I basically just studied the Talmud my whole life till now.
All right.
Nicole, from Manhattan. You're good.
Yep.
And I'm obsessed with Montreal pizza.
Very long from Staten Island. The reason I'm here is because my brother randomly just signed me up here. So I'm gonna learn. And interesting fact about me, I like anime. Yes.
Nice.
FMA? Okay, then yes, I do. I didn't hear what I didn't hear what.
Oh, okay.
Anime questions. My name is Jasmine, and I'm from San Francisco. And interesting fact about me, my special talent is putting together IKEA furniture.
Whoa.
I'm really good at it, and hopefully that translates to coding somehow.
Let's just say equate this part to this part.
Yeah.
Combine that. So I mean,
Strategy,
yes, so.
problem solving, perseverance.
Hello, my name is Brian Cal. I live in Long Island, Green Neck. The reason why I'm here is that I'm trying to build up my coding skills, and apply it to my business application. And what's interesting is that I'm trying to get into the game development. And the reason why, it's part of the reason why I'm here is I'm trying to make sure how that I can learn as much code as possible and how I can figure out how to another good example of game project and integrate it into my resume, just increase it skills. So yeah.
Nice. Now we can go this way.
My name's James. I'm from Jersey. I'm here to learn code and interesting fact about me. This is my first year not playing football since I was about 5 years old.
Alright, my name's Susie, and as I said, I kind of started with the boot camp prep last go round. I kind of got sick at the end, so I bailed out of it, but it's a really good class. You're going to learn a lot. I'm from originally Cleveland, Ohio, but I came here to New York from California. So, why am I here? Yeah, learn more JavaScript. My background is in front-end development. I worked at a lot of ad agencies and that sort of thing. So, interesting fact about me, my dad was in the military, so I lived all over the United States and the world.
Nice.
How you guys doing? My name's Francis. Originally from Jersey, spent the past 3 years in Houston. Here to learn code, obviously. Interesting fact, it's pretty random, but I hate avocados. So
What?
I can't say I don't mind it. I also don't say I can't like it as well.
Neutral.
Yeah.
They're too expensive.
my name is Farah. I'm from Astoria, Queens. So I'm like very impressed that you guys travel from Jersey because I was complaining to my friend about the commute right up. So, and an interesting fact about me is I really like to be a mixologist.
Mixologist.
Oh.
My name is Eliana. I'm from Boston originally. I'm here because I hate my day job. And an interesting fact about me is that I got my appendix out a couple weeks ago.
Whoa.
So it's fine.
Oh. I think there's one more lady over here that, yeah, feel free to introduce yourself, these three.
Hi, my name is Fanny. I'm from here. And I'm here because I want to see what coding is for me. And an interesting thing about me, so I like to think that I can make fiance, but I don't.
Nice. All right, awesome. So I'm glad all you wonderful people are here. I'm very excited to get to know you guys more. And yeah, thanks for sharing about yourselves. All right, so a little bit more about the course. There is going to be, so a lot of it is just going to be problem solving, but there's going to be 2 projects where we'll build sort of larger programs, and it'll basically be an application of what we're learning to building something. I believe one is like it checks if a Sudoku is valid, and another one is like it generates random quotes and stuff. So we'll see what we're learning in application. So a lot of you guys might be very tired and may not be able to do these. So these are optional, I believe, but they're a good opportunity to basically, again, see the real world application. And if you guys send it to me, then I can look it over and help you guys out with it as well. So yeah. Oh yeah, it's just a Sudoku. Like one of them, I think it's like a Sudoku. It's like some crossword puzzle type of thing. Well, it's not a crossword puzzle, but it's a type of game. And essentially, what you'll write a program to see if it's valid or not. It's just like a checker basically. And then the other project is something that generates random quotes or something along those lines. I'll introduce it more as we get further along. Yeah, these are optional, but if you want to try them and tackle them, then you guys can, and I can help you guys out with that too. But these aren't required.
Do you recommend them?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend them. I would recommend doing, going out of your way to, but if you're really tired, then I wouldn't. I would recommend sleep. Because it's always best to come with a refreshed mind and eager to learn. So if you're feeling exhausted, then I wouldn't do it. But if you have the time and you want to challenge yourself, then I would definitely recommend it. Yeah.
I know the class ends at 9:30, but for those who actually have some free time here and there, can you stay later and work on code?
9:40, I think it's till 9:40,
Okay.
and I will definitely be headed out. It's pretty late. But if you want to get help, then you can feel free to ask during the lecture, during the course, or you can Slack me with some questions you have on something. And I believe you guys, I'll get back to you on this, but there's a lot of classes happening, so I don't know how early you guys can come, but you guys can come a little earlier. But I believe at 9:40 you guys can stay later because I think they don't necessarily kick you out, but I'll definitely be headed out. I might stay 10 minutes after if you guys have problem you need help with something. I'm happy to stay a little bit, but not
And the
crazy
commercial
hours.
course clears out around 6, right?
Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking. Like, if you guys want to come at 6, I think that's okay. But there might be something going on, so it's not a guarantee. But usually, you guys can find a seat somewhere, and like work on stuff. If you guys want to come a little bit early. Yeah.
We did come early.
Yeah.
I feel like we did come early, right? Like before 6.
Uh-huh.
How are you able to come up here? The front desk?
The front desk won't let you up until 6:15.
Until 6:15. Okay, yeah, that's good to know. Then I guess it's
That gives you 15 to 20 minutes.
yeah. Huh? What's up? Yeah, I mean,
I'll just come here like 6. Alright at 6.
yeah, I guess if they enforce 6:15, then you can try to come at 6. But yeah, I would just recommend coming at 6:15. So the practice assessments. So after this course is over, so basically there's how to get into the immersive program is you take a HackerRank assessment where basically you do it remotely and you solve a bunch of problems on your computer, and then you send those problems in to our admissions, and then based on the results of that, you may get an interview where you basically talk with one of the fellows or some staff here at Full Stack and go through the interview process. So I believe there's also like an application too. Like first you apply, and then you do this assessment, and then you do the interview. So there are a couple steps involved. The cool thing about bootcamp prep is if you guys do this course, then after this course is done on the final last day, you guys will have a chance to take a prep assessment here in class, and it won't count, but I believe if you do well, like it can be used in place of your actual assessment if you do well. But if you like just bomb it and you don't want to submit it, then you have that option too. Like no one's gonna look at it unless you want them to, I believe.
What about the Flex program?
It's the same thing, yeah.
Because I know the Flex program, I looked in it, I believe the deadline is the 18th, and this class runs longer than that. So how does that work if because it's saying that the deadline for the application for the January cohort for the Flex program is due on the 18th, which I believe is a Sunday.
You might have to do the next cohort if you want to complete this and then apply. I mean, you can apply whenever you want.
Yeah.
But for the risk-free assessment, I believe like you have to do it on the last day. So you miss that cohort, and you would have to do the next cohort, I think.
One thing about that, I talked to, I guess, someone named Aaron today about that issue, because the immersive programs also has applications due several days before this program finishes. But what he told me is that the actual application, once you get your materials in, you're not taking the entry exam until several days later.
That makes sense.
So you might have enough wiggle room between getting the application in to actually finish this course and take the exam before you'd be taking the I guess, testing of the application.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Appreciate it.
I guess it's for both.
Yeah, because the immersive, I know, I think it's 23rd, I want to say, is like the next application. I think we finish up on the 25th or 26th. There's a couple day overlap.
Yeah.
But yeah, from what Aaron said today, I guess, yeah, the application deadline is not when you're going to get the test. It usually comes a few days afterwards.
Perfect.
So I guess it does sync up.
I had my technical interview last Monday.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still waiting to hear back, but what do I need to do?
I would just, I mean, if it's been like over 2 weeks, then I would reach out to them. But sometimes it takes a while just because there might be a high number of applicants, or there might, for any number of reasons. So I would just hang tight for that.
Yeah, because I did like an interview for the January.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if they haven't gotten back to you in like 2 weeks, then I would give them, reach out and inquire. But until that point, you can just hang tight, or you can feel free to inquire if you want. How long has it been?
It's been a week.
Okay.
Kind of week. Again, my interview was last Monday.
Yeah. I would just hang tight, and if they haven't responded in another week, then feel free to shoot them another email. So we have some values here at full stack. So again, sometimes it's going to feel overwhelming, but you just have to be patient. Sometimes you might think you know a lot more than your partner, or you might think your partner knows a lot more than you, but there's that kind of thing is just going to happen in the workplace too. It's like there's going to be people that know a lot more than you. There's going to be people that you're going to be teaching, and so just I would ask that you guys just be patient with that. Always ask questions. Don't ever feel like your question is gonna be judged or anything. Like, it's a judging free space here, so you guys feel free to, if you guys are having any trouble, just reach out. Just trust the process, help each other out, and this will be a fun and very educational and informative process. Again, there are some subtle isms, and so these are things that we do not tolerate here. And so if you guys are in violation of these values, then we will definitely have to take the appropriate actions. So again, just be professional, don't be an asshole, and be very just be professional and kind to each other. Oh, that's not safe for work. Yeah, so anything you wouldn't be looking at work, feel free to leave that stuff for home. And I don't know why this thing is bugging out, but these are remote. So since we're all here, I'll skip over this since we're going to be doing the in-person portion. So I'm going to give a brief little history of JavaScript as a language and why we're learning JavaScript. So it's kind of small, and if you guys can't see, I apologize. Like, I need to upgrade my Keynote, and I'm going to do this right after this, but if I try to open the cloud version, it just takes forever to get to full screen. So I'm just gonna, our future lectures will be nice and big once I update my Keynote. But yeah, JavaScript, it's the most popular language in the world, mainly due to the fact that a lot of applications that used to be on our desktops, like Excel and Word and things like that, now there's been like a shift to move all of these applications to the web. So now you have Google Drive, Google Sheets, and it's way easier to collaborate online. And so the web has seen a large boom in terms of the applications that are developed on the web. So because of that, JavaScript becomes more popular because JavaScript is the language that runs on browsers. So usually a lot of desktop applications, they'll be written in different languages, not JavaScript, but anything that you see on any website, there's definitely JavaScript involved in that. And so, yeah, that's why we learn it. It allows your web applications to be very interactive. So a website is basically just a bundle of HTML, which you can see right here. If you open up your console in the web browser, you can see the exact elements. So it's HTML, and it's also JavaScript files. So this is really minified and highly optimized JavaScript, so that you're not going to write code that looks like this. But you guys can't even see it, but essentially JavaScript is what, so for example, if you want to sign in to an application, your HTML is like your email input. That's just an HTML element. But when you actually click sign in, that event, what happens on that event is all coded in JavaScript. So JavaScript will have these listeners on these buttons, and like on a click event, you'll do something. You'll carry out a bunch of instructions, such as like take that data and give it to a different computer that has all your login information so it can verify you and then sign you in, stuff like that. So
What was the,
yeah.
what's the command to like bring up the like HTML?
The shortcut is
yeah.
Command Option I on Macs,
Oh, it's on.
but you can also just right click and do inspect.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Yeah. So yeah, you can play with it. You can like edit it right then and there too, and it'll change the color of your website and things like that. But yeah, it's honestly just going to become more and more prevalent. Back when websites were really back when our internet was really slow, website JavaScript had more limited use case. Like if you wanted a powerful application like Excel, you had to do it on your computer, on your actual machine instead of the browser. But now with internet speed so fast and browsers so powerful, we can create entire applications on browsers. And so this is just one of the reasons why JavaScript is really a great language to start out learning, and it has a lot of it's becoming more and more prevalent throughout. And so basically more employers are, looking for people that know how to write JavaScript. Yeah, I kind of went over these points, but again, it runs on the web, and there's a lot more web applications being created these days. Even really old companies that may only have desktop apps, they're like creating new apps for the web. You can also create mobile apps using JavaScript with React Native. And so there's really no sort of environment where you can't use JavaScript. Primarily, it is going to be for web applications, but the use cases are just becoming more and more widespread. So yeah. And in terms of full stack, what this means is it can run on the browser, but also on servers. And so a server is basically just a computer. So like your laptop could be a server. But when you open Google Chrome, that's just the browser. But the entire machine itself is like a server. So what this means in terms of it can run on servers is back in the 90s, JavaScript was only able to run on the client, which is the browser. So you could only write like your visual elements of your page using JavaScript, and all that logic on the server, such as like, for example, if you were to sign into an application, that logic to verify in the database that your account exists, all that logic is not on the browser because it wouldn't be secure to have that information just out on the browser. So all that information is basically on a machine, on a computer. And that logic you couldn't handle with JavaScript. There was no environment for JavaScript to run on computers. It was limited only to the browser. But with Node, now you can write server-side code on with JavaScript as well. So basically what this means is you can create an entire application with all the features that you're used to, like for example, Instagram or Facebook or any of these things. You could technically create all those applications using just JavaScript because all of the server-side code could also be written in JavaScript. So that's what it means by full stack, is both on the client and on the server. If that was confusing, we can like get more into the conceptual stuff going forward, but I just wanted to clarify what full stack meant. And it's pretty relatively, JavaScript is pretty learner friendly. So if you guys have seen like other languages, like type languages like Java or C, there's a lot of, it's pretty strict. And so it requires you to basically write a lot more code in terms of creating programs. So JavaScript is like really flexible and lightweight. It doesn't really enforce any type of like strict structure. Like you can kind of do whatever you like, and you guys will see this more and more as we dive into it, but it's just a great language to start out learning. And later on, if you need to learn other languages, knowing JavaScript will be like a great foundation, because other languages, although they're different, will learn a lot of foundational concepts in this class that you can apply to basically every computer science language. So basically, this slide is to show that JavaScript is a constantly evolving language. As I mentioned before, like it used to be sort of very limited in scope. Like it could only run on the browser, and not a lot of people try to improve upon it because it had a very limited use case. But now, as it's becoming more and more popular, and basically you have to, if you're a company, any company this day and age, you kind of have to have some type of web online presence. Now people are actually improving upon it and tacking on new features and functionalities to it. So there's a lot of different ways to do kind of the same thing, is what this slide is basically showing. And what we're going to learn in this class, we're going to learn a little bit about these new features that JavaScript has, but we're not going to focus on them. Primarily, like you guys might see, the solution might look a little different than what you guys wrote, but they could, under the hood, be doing the same thing. It's just a different syntax. So the point of this class isn't going to be to focus too much on those, but more of the overlying concepts.
Do you know why they changed it? Why they're switching up the syntax?
Yeah. So one is a lot of like I wouldn't say like old school, but a lot of classically trained like software engineers, they might be used to seeing things in a certain way. And so when they look at JavaScript, it's like very different. And so they kind of bring parts of the language that they know and are used to into JavaScript. And sort of why that could be helpful is like it sort of standardizes across the board a lot of these patterns. So when a developer is used to something in one language and then comes JavaScript and like get off the ground running with these like patterns and structures that they're familiar with. And it also, sometimes they just add things just so that coders don't have to write as much code. It's like shortcuts. Like, for example, like instead of writing function, you just write this weird thing, but it saves you from typing this out.
And is that weird thing from another language?
No, this is actually, I mean, there might be some other language that I'm not aware of that uses this, but this isn't something that like we'll go over it later, but like for example, the word class, you guys might have seen this in Java and things like that, but JavaScript never had the keyword class to instantiate classes until recently, and they just tacked that on. Stuff like that is borrowed from a different language. But stuff like this, some of these things, they're to reduce the amount of code you write, reduce how messy your code looks. Also, there's some like underlying functionality for writing it this way that's different from writing it this way. But we don't want to get into like too deep into sort of the under the hood systems. Right. But yeah, for our purposes, you can think of those as the same, but they do have some differences.
So for you as a software engineer, do you have to worry about refactoring your code when changes like that happen? To rewrite function and convert the word function to parentheses?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it depends on how much resources your company has. So let's say you're like Airbnb and you have like billions of dollars and like a lot of like thousands and thousands of engineers, then you might do something like that. So just to like, but that doesn't really get you much, but you've already optimized so much that you just have to like find things to do. And this could be one of them, just to get with the latest features. But at a company with 21 engineers, like there's going to be a lot more features that are more important that people like product will come and ask for all these new features on our applications. And that takes a lot more priority over something like this, where only the engineers care about it. Because like the rest of the company, like they don't care how this, like how you wrote it. They just care if it works. Is it fast? Is it buggy? So there's always that difference where at a large tech company with thousands of engineers, like you have the ability to say, I'm gonna take like 10 engineers and like just work on this like thing, but it would depend.
In terms of functionality, is one faster or less buggy or than the other? I mean, as some people, I guess, would be able to type function faster than they can type the symbols.
Yeah,
Just
there
depending.
are like performance differences
Mm-hmm.
when you are thinking at scale of like thousands and thousands of functions. So in a certain case, like writing it out this way may be faster. So there are some differences, but for our case, like they're pretty much interchangeable in the same thing.
No, one doesn't take up more memory than the other.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was alluding to. Like it would. I believe that when you guys learn about this, like there's gonna be a whole lecture on objects and this in JavaScript, so I'll get into more of that in that lecture.
Okay.
But essentially, I believe if you write certain methods on objects this way, I believe it'll take more memory because one method basically every time you create an object, it creates that function again. Whereas another method, like you have a reference to that one function, and every new object that creates just points to that function. So essentially, you have one versus like many. So yeah, there would be differences but you're not going to notice these unless like you're creating like thousands or millions of objects.
So which way takes up less memory?
I believe this one. When you're writing them as methods on objects, though, like this is kind of getting, it's like stuff that we wouldn't really need to know, but yeah, I can clarify more in a later lecture when we learn about like objects.
Just in terms of writing it, so say our function was called like my function. So
Yeah.
The first one would be like function,
My function.
parentheses with your variables.
Yeah.
The second one would just be my function, parentheses with your variables, and then the equal sign, arrow, and the other brackets.
So one would be, it'd be exactly what you said, function, add, and then the parentheses. And another one would be like const or var.
Okay.
My function, var sum equals this. Like the parentheses arrow that.
Okay.
So one you're instantiating using like a variable, and another one you're using the word function.
Okay.
I thought we weren't using var anymore.
Yeah, I mean,
last time around.
yeah,
we said, no more var.
I mean, yeah, you shouldn't use var, but you can use var still. It's not gonna break, like nothing's gonna break, but in terms of using variable instantiations, you should be using let and const. But yeah, they can, essentially they're pretty interchangeable. But the using let and const will enforce strictness that can help your code. So, yeah.
David,
Mm-hmm.
question,
Yeah.
Out of curiosity,
Uh-huh.
is the EX next related to the EX6? Are they the same thing or just two different? Or does it matter?
I'm not too sure what ES next is. ES next might be just
6.
Yeah, it might be 6, or it might be in reference to like the latest ES version.
Okay.
But yeah, ES5, ES6, ES7, ES8, they're just different like versions of JavaScript that have different added on features. But everything should be backwards compatible. So if you have something that worked on ES5 and then you use ES6, it should still work. Actually, older features will always work in the newer environments, but if you have, like for certain browsers, you're gonna have to use like a transpiler to take that ES6 or that very up to date version, and then take like sort of turn that code into an older version, because the old stuff will work in the new stuff, but the new stuff won't necessarily. I got that mixed up. Yeah. Yeah, so just a couple pointers on how to really get the most from this course is to basically do your pre-readings and watch the pre-recorded lectures. If you don't have time for those though, I would definitely say like it's always better to like learn by doing. So if you're pressed for time, I would also encourage. I think I have my flux on, so this. Yeah, it's gonna be on full stack. The answers I'll unlock after the lecture, after the workshop that day, but all the pre-readings I can like unlock them so you guys can have access to them. But yeah, I would encourage you guys to also, after the workshop is done and you guys haven't, there's gonna be times where you guys haven't finished the problems, to try and look them over and try to tackle them yourself and try to figure out what's going on in the code itself. If you have to choose that versus watching a lecture, because I'll be giving a lecture in class, and so yeah, I would definitely recommend learning by doing. Also, ask for help if you need it. Again, there's no such thing as a stupid question or even the smallest, little thing where you're missing some type of syntax, like, and you don't understand. Just like, feel free to shout it out. And yeah, watch the solution videos too. If you guys have the time, we're gonna have videos of going through the breakdown of the solutions, and even though you guys solved it one way, it might be a totally different way that they solved it, and it's nice to approach problems in different perspectives. So
is that a common thing where there'd be like multiple ways to really like get to a
yeah,
ultimate end?
exactly. There definitely is. And
I
when
question, I
yeah,
noticed on a lot of, well, when I was solving some pre-work stuff, I would sometimes get the green, and then when I got it, he used different stuff that wasn't necessarily in the lecture.
yeah.
And especially with like the function notation too. Like I think he was definitely using
he was doing something else.
ES next.
Oh, ES next. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So it'll just help to know those different ways of doing it, but you shouldn't get too bogged down in like the like using the fancy like curly brace thing, shortcut stuff. If you can do it using because all those shortcuts are building off of the function notation under the hood. Like all of the fancy features that you see, they're just like for loops and stuff like at the core of it. So if you understand the core, then it's better to build up like that and know all the foundational stuff. Don't think about the fancy stuff. Just go super basic and then just work your way up, and then eventually those things will come with just practice and just familiarity. But I wouldn't get too bogged down on like, whoa, this is like a different way. Just acknowledge it, but it's not the most important thing.
So we do
Yeah.
videos, after we watch it, and we do the workshop here, and after that, of course, you just give us a solution. Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's exactly how it's going to work. Pre-recorded stuff, pre-readings. Come in here and I'll give a lecture, and you guys will feel free to ask anything. I'll try to give like some like real-world application to certain things, like for an interview, for example, like why might you use objects instead of arrays? And like I'll try to like work in some practical application during the lecture too. But and then after we'll do the workshops.
So for the first one, complete the BCP pre-work on curriculum first. Is that the work we did on our own before class, or is it something else?
I believe that's the work you guys have already done. It's like it was like a workshop.
Got it.
Yeah.
Just make sure it wasn't a second one.
No, it's just that one.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and so we'll go over some tidy code tips, and then afterwards I'll pair you guys off, and then you guys will do your first pair programming of this class. Essentially, at our company, at many companies, writing neat code is really, really important, just because you have to read a lot of code. And if it's messy, then reading code already is hard enough as it is. Reading neat code is hard enough. But if you write it in a really messy way where you don't really know where the if brackets close, or, you have like a bunch of nested ifs and like really hard to read code, then it just becomes a nightmare to collaborate and to improve on and add on features to existing code. So we definitely spend a lot of time reading and debugging than writing it. That's a true statement, because once you get into a role, there's going to be a lot of code that already exists that years ago somebody wrote, and you have to figure out why it's breaking, or tack on some new functionality to it. So it's definitely very attractive to employers when you're, going through your code and solving a problem, doing it in just a neat way, taking a little extra time to make it look tidy and presentable. So yeah, it's definitely very important. To be honest, there's a lot of plugins for editors that do this automatically. So you can say, enforce, like semicolons, or like automatically add semicolons to the end of your statements, or don't add them. Like, it's kind of like a team-based thing where in your team you'll decide like, these are the rules that we want to abide by, and then we'll just stick to them, and then you like put them into a configuration file, and then whenever you save or whenever you commit some code, it'll just like automatically like make it look super standardized. But unfortunately, in like for interviews and things like that, usually you'll be doing them in a code editor where you won't have those automatic features. So it will be helpful to also manually be able to format your code appropriately. And this is just sort of a time thing where you just take the time to put everything on like one indentation, for example. So you have your function, and the first statement inside your function, like you either use like 2 spaces, 3 spaces, a tab, but stay consistent throughout, so that if there's another if, it's on like the same level as this if. So yeah, it's just things like that where it makes your code like a lot more readable, and when you're working with someone else, it'll just be a lot smoother when you're working in this way. So yeah, indentation is important. So just a quick example, I'm writing my function sum, and so like I'll say let's see, so I just want to use like ifs. So I made one tab here, put this if here, if season equals, winter. Like I'd want to keep it in the same, if season equals spring. You just kind of get the idea. But if like, I wouldn't want to do something like this or keep it all uneven, or I'd want to keep it all at the same level. It's just a simple thing, but it's important.
So if you have the same of a type of operator, then you want to keep those operators indented at the same.
Yeah, at the same level. Yeah, you wouldn't want to do anything like that, or some weird thing where you just do like this. It's just like trying to keep things consistent. Variable naming is also really important. So you always want to make descriptive variables. So you never want to do something like this, like x equals 68. That's not helping anybody understand what x is. So, for this, I made this be season. I could have done this, but like, you can kind of guess that this is a season by me using x, but it really just makes things harder than it really needs to be. So always having descriptive variables is a very important thing in coding. So when you're declaring variables, you should always be as descriptive as possible. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I believe there's a couple different things. So if you use let me see. Let me try it out. I think it's for scoping. So if you use let, let's try this. I believe it keeps things constrained within its own scope. So I believe let's see. Yeah, I believe if I did var here, so right now it's saying that I is not defined because I only exists within this for loops scope or this for loops environment. So if I try to log I outside of the for loop, then it says error, I is not defined. I think if you use var, I think it will be defined. Oh, for? Oh, we're gonna learn about this, I believe, tomorrow. But it's a way to loop. It's like a looping system. So essentially, this statement inside here runs 5 times because I'm setting an upper limit at 5. But we'll go into this deeper tomorrow. So if you guys aren't familiar with this, then it's fine because we're gonna learn it. But that's the sort of the difference between let and var. Is that var, when you declare to var, even outside of the scope of this loop, you still have a variable. You still have a value for this. So like, this is probably easier to. Like once you're done with the for loop, I still exists because you declared it using var. But if you use let, then it'll block you and it'll say I is not defined. So like, it's like little stuff like that. But to be honest, like I wouldn't even get bogged down in that stuff now. But yeah, definitely use let and const.
But if
yeah.
So if it won't allow, if let won't allow I to run outside of those brackets.
Yeah, curly brackets, yeah.
Then if you're only supposed to use let or
const,
then how would you use
you don't ever want to use this variable outside of this. That's what it's saying. It's like it's forcing you to be strict. Like JavaScript inherently is super flexible, and that's part of the beauty of JavaScript is that it allows you to kind of do whatever you want. But sometimes that's a bad thing when you're working in large teams and everyone's doing things differently, and there's no like structure and like and there's no strictness and guardrails. So it can really be easy for a JavaScript only app to look like a complete mess.
Yeah, because I was trying when he did a for loop on one of the practice 3 problems, and I was trying it this way, and it kept giving me the I was undefined, and that's what I was like.
Yeah, you'd never want to declare like a variable here and use it outside of this. Like it's meant to only be in here.
The outside.
Yeah, on the inside.
So
Now,
with bar, it allows you to print the outside.
Yeah.
The outside, but with let, it's more limited.
it's constrained. Yeah,
The-
it's putting more guardrails up.
Okay. Similar to how like
Const forces it to be that type, and doesn't let you just change things, because if you have something in one file declared as an array, and like in some other file you change that array and another file expects this to be an array, then like you've just like screwed the entire like
so lit is like allowing that variable to stay time. It's not
yeah,
change like
you could change it.
You can change it, but not like super abruptly change. Like
No, you can abruptly change it. You can let is you have complete flexibility. You can do whatever you want. You can change the type, but const is when you expect something not to change, and that's really helpful if yeah, constant general. It's just a value that you expect that's never going to change. So an example might be like, for a company, you have a marketing email called like marketing@painsend.com, and you never expect that value to change in your code, and you have to write a bunch of code that like emails that email if something happens. So you declare that in one place, const marketing email equals marketing@painsend.com, and now you declare it in one place, and JavaScript has an ability for you to basically declare one. There's gonna be, when you're creating apps, there's gonna be multiple files, like, and so you can have one file that has that const email and other files that take from that file that value. And so if you're saying it's a constant, it's never going to change, then those other files where you're taking that value, it's never going to be surprised when the value that it gets is something different, because it's a constant. You know it's never going to change, so you can rely on that value being the same at all times. And the reason why you might do this is because let's say the like code is all about changing things, right? Like, or that's software. It's the name soft implies that it's flexible, and someone's gonna come and say, yo, this looks really bad, like we need to change everything. And that's constantly just the nature of software. Like when you look at Facebook, it changes. Like it's not static. So let's say that email changed from marketing@painsend.com to the best marketing team at painsend.com. Let's say that email just changed. If you wrote that email, hard-coded it, in every single time you use it, in every place you use it, you're going to have to go on all those files, change it in all those places. It's going to take way more time than having one file with that email, and everything else just points to it. So when you change it in one place, all the places that are getting that automatically get the new version. You don't have to change anything. So,
and that's a value of const.
Yeah. Is that all those places that are using that are accessing the email through that email file, they know that value is not, like, it's going to be a string, for example. So you know it's not going to become like an object or something. And so if you're using like string methods like length and slice, you know you can like constantly use it because you're guaranteed that email is a string. You're like saying it's const, like it's going to be a string type, and you can't reassign it to be a different type. And we can get into this. If this is confusing, we'll get into more of like getting values from different files down the line. But yeah, are there any other questions about let and const? If this is all confusing, like don't worry. For now, like we'll get into it as like the class progresses. We'll learn more and more about this, but for now, just try and use let and const other than as opposed to var. And so yeah, if you're using so as I said, you should never name variables something really ambiguous like x or y or z or num. You should write like num of states or age, or you should never just be vague. But for loops, usually this is kind of a norm, so you can use I. But sometimes I even like to be descriptive in for loops, so I'll write like index or something. But yeah, it's a shortcut. It represents index, but just in case, like, let's say you had like a column index and like a row index or something. I might even do that. I might even write like for call index instead of just index. Like, just if you're, the more descriptive you are, the better. It's just going to be more helpful in the long run. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the lecture part of today. So